channel, but I do occasionally speak on political topics if they intersect with technology. And as I said, I was going to do an update since I spoke about the Russia-Ukraine cyber war last time. Now, previously, before the counteroffensive, we've seen Ukraine being successful in defensive battles, with Russia attempting to decapitate Ukraine and take over Kiev. But as we've seen, that didn't quite work out for them. We've seen their tanks getting blown out by Javelin and NLAWs, and we've seen NATO weapons help the Ukrainians defend themselves against the Russian aggression. And like the many memes we've seen of Javelin and NLAWs and the songs of Bayraktar and all these pictures, we're now seeing the same memes about the HIMARS, which has been scaring Putin's army quite a bit. In fact, the HIMARS has been making such a difference that fake HIMARS that Ukraine have been putting up, made out of wood or inflatable material, has been targeted by Russia with their most advanced weapons. In fact, you can see that Russia has reported destroyed more HIMARS than Ukraine was actually given. So you can see it's scaring Putin's armies quite a bit. And rightly so, because HIMARS is quite a well-designed and awesome weapon, especially in this phase of war, which has been primarily an artillery and heavy weapons battle. So earlier this Wednesday, when Putin dropped the 2 bombshells on us, the explicit nuclear threats and the mobilizing, he said that he was mobilizing 300,000 troops in what he calls a partial mobilization, which previously is something he said would not going to happen. Now, the mobilization is unlikely to make much of a difference in the war, other than stalling the inevitable. Furthermore, the degree of mobilization is pretty vague in terms of who can be mobilized. So there are rumors that it could be up to 1 million Russians. But even then, that wouldn't make much of a difference. With the poor training, poor equipment, and poor logistics of Putin's army, they will face inevitable losses and defeat. Not to mention, especially due to poor feeding and poor equipment and poor training, the fighting morale is quite low.
What the hell is that?
In fact, why wouldn't it be? Fight and die for what? So a bitter old man can relive his Soviet days and his cronies can stay in power and buy more yachts? So he can send his daughter to private school or what? In Europe? Russia has lost more men in this war than the Soviets lost in 10 years in Afghanistan, and the US has lost in 20 years in this war on terror. It's estimated to be over 80,000 casualties. Also, in my last video, I mentioned Starlink, so I feel I should do a quick follow-up on that as well. Putin's army has been illegally attacking civilian infrastructure and causing damage to their internet. Those attacks severely degraded the ability for Ukrainians to connect with each other, to do banking, to live their lives, and so forth. But a few months ago, the Ukrainian Vice Prime Minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, asked Elon Musk for Starlink receivers to combat this problem around May 19th or so. And Elon Musk's Starlink team did deliver. They received their satellite dishes, and it's been going quite well. I mean, it's been helping Ukrainians connect with OSINT, which is open source intelligence community, to help track down war crimes committed by Russian soldiers. Russian soldiers had been blaming Ukrainians for the dead civilians that have been found and had been the victim of war crimes. You see, people who have been involved with preventing and trying to document these war crimes have been using tools like FineClone to match faces to video. So it's been interesting to see how the international community of independent users have been getting involved. Starlink also helped protect Ukraine against Russian cyber attacks, since the security systems of Starlink has held up quite well. It's even helped, the connectivity can even be used by the Ukrainians early in the war. They have used it to help use the drones to pinpoint enemy tanks and also to even modify the drones to carry bombs and dropping those bombs on the enemy tanks. So you've seen quite a bit of innovation when it comes to this war, or special military operation if Putin's. Now, quite a lot of more news has been happening around the world, and I may do an update and we'll see. I will go back to my normal coverage of tech, and I may not post about Russia for a while unless there's a major update that I feel I should cover. I may decide to do a quick video on Iran, as I mentioned Anonymous last time, and recently they've been involved in the protests in Iran, where the morality police has killed a woman after she had been detained because they weren't satisfied how she was wearing her headscarf. I hope that Anonymous and the protesters are able to keep fighting for their freedom, and people around the world continue to stand up against oppression. As for my final thoughts on the Russian mobilization, I think we should continue to hire as many IT professionals as we can and other scientists so that we can brain drain Russia, and they'll have resources, hire creatives, people who create culture, drain them of as many skilled people as possible. We should also consider offering refugee status to men fleeing, provided they're not in favor of the war, such as they can sign a document that prevents them from advocating for the war if they're staying abroad. Now, nuclear use is quite unlikely despite Putin's threats, but on the unlikely possibility that he does use nukes in Ukraine, I think the US should respond with conventional strikes in Ukraine against Russians, as well as attacking the Black Sea Fleet. I think NATO should respond harshly and directly, and the nuclear taboo needs to remain for the sake of world peace and the continued survival of humanity. Anyway, we'll cover some lighter topics, and I have some cool news about the VR headsets and other interesting things coming up. For now, take care and peace out.